Welcome to On a Way with Beryl Botman. Today I'm in conversation with Belinda Jackson. Belinda is a trained teacher but a multi-talented career woman who reinvented her career along the way. I am so happy that you are here with me today.
Thank you, Beryl. It's really wonderful to be with you, and I was really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, Belinda, we don't know each other all that long. Since 2019, I think, when I was looking for a translator of my book at the time. It was Without You. And Theodore die Dood ons skei to be translated into English. And I spoke to my friend. I didn't want just any translator. I wanted somebody who I could trust with my heart and my head to do that. And Charlene, my friend, she suggested that I contact you, and I did, and you accepted, and we've come quite a long way because you also translated my second book, Still Love Remains, Steeds bly die liefde. And here we are today. I have discovered that you are such a multi-talented woman, such an inspiration, because of the one thing, amongst others, is that you reinvented your career. You started out as a teacher and studied at UWC to qualify as in music teaching. And in that way, we were similar because I'm also a teacher. In my case, I'm a language teacher.
Yes, thank you, Beryl. It's really lovely to just hear you recount how we got to meet and how we are sharing similar backgrounds in terms of teaching. I did start out at UWC, where I met your first husband, Russell. I was at UWC in the ladies' hostel at that time. There were only two. And Russell's first wife was a third year, I think, social work student. And she was the protector of the first years because we had been initiated wildly. And she didn't participate in that. She would just say, it's okay, it's going to be fine. And so Russell would visit her and we saw them together. Then I became this teacher of music, but I also did honors in Afrikaans Nederlands because I had the two majors, Afrikaans and Nederlands and music. But married a priest and traveled around the Western Cape, I would say, as a teacher. But language and music was my two main focuses, foci, and I really enjoyed doing all of that.
Yeah, and so your career as a teacher is not a usual, ordinary teacher. So another similarity between the two of us is that we also both married ministers of religion, but they had different kinds of careers. And I'm glad that I met you, and in the meantime, we have become friends. And the other similarity between the two of us is we don't stagnate.
Yes. Always on the move. And literally, my family were always on the move because my husband, Austin, who's now retired, he was an Anglican priest. And in the Anglican church, you don't stay forever in one particular, which we call parish. So as a music teacher, I didn't actually start out as a music teacher. Strangely enough, when I got to my first school in Belhar, then it was called Belhar number 2, and it then got the name Excelsior Secondary. I became a maths teacher. Can you believe it? Because the principal just said, you have mathematics until matric. You had it on those days, we called it higher grade. And so we need a maths teacher for standard 6. You will teach mathematics. I do have language teachers, and music wasn't part of the school's offering. And I enjoyed teaching music mathematics, and loved it until I managed to get the music post at Bellville South Secondary. And I loved it as an exam subject. But, marrying this priest, he was then sent to Gerbo, and off we went to Gerbo, and I had to say goodbye to my music post. Took a year off to look after my newborn baby, and then I got an Afrikaans post at Groenberg Secondary in Gerbo. And then the Boswell Wilkie Circus was on the move again, this time to Klaver, because he became the rector of the parish of Calvinia, that comprised Calvinia, Louisfontein in the Bushmanland, Klaver itself, Vredendal, and Lutzville. And I became an English teacher at Vredendal Secondary because is van die Engelse kerk, the principal said, and we need an English teacher. So off I went to teach English, but also class music. And the one thing, music was always part of my teaching, whatever classes I did, be it English, be it Bible studies, the guitar and the piano would be there. So it was always about engaging the young people through music and using that as a medium.
You always were involved in whatever community you were, not only in the classroom, but also in the community. And that is also how you got involved in the field band.
Correct.
And well known in that, and also in church music.
Yes, always
and
church
you
music.
Yes, and also having studied with the Royal Academy for church music as well. So you have really immersed yourself in all the communities. And the other thing that really intrigues me about you, you reinvented your career.
Yes, being on the move, I took from Klaver, Vredendal, we spent 6 years in Botrevier, where my husband then became the priest, Kleinmond, Verliesdorp, and also Hoek. And after that, to Macassar. But I still traveled over the mountain to Gerbo, where I taught then music extracurricular at Pineview Primary, doing all sorts of productions, Oliver the Musical, The Lion King, and what have you, with the school, involving the whole school in these projects. And at a time, I developed high blood pressure because it was quite a stressful thing to do, involving a whole school, one teacher, but always in terms in collaboration with colleagues, particularly at the Pineview Primary School, that I want to actually sort of isolate as the school that allowed me. But the church also allowed me a lot of freedom to do passion musicals and teaching the kids recorder to learn to read music. And it was when I was at Firgrove Primary, finally, that I did these productions too. And 1 year, as I just applied to go to the Macassar High School, because I was also part of the President's Award for Youth Empowerment, that allowed young people to empower themselves, take responsibility for their own lives through a number of activities. And I suffered a brain aneurysm in front of a grade 5 class, in the classroom, that really changed my life altogether. As a neurosurgeon who is a brain specialist, scientist tells me what a miracle it is that I am alive, because according to him, firstly, you die. Secondly, if you don't die, you're paralyzed or you cannot speak. And I survived all of that, but couldn't then teach because when I heard what had happened, I had to see a psychologist to help me process what had happened, because I lost my groove, as it were. And going to the school, Macassar High School, that I then became a teacher of, to just see if I could teach again. I then was approached again by this project, the Field Band Foundation, that I had rolled out on behalf of the national NGO in 2002. They approached me while I was on sick leave. They needed someone to run the Western Cape region. This happened to me in 2006, the brain aneurysm. And I was in recovery on sick leave when the CEO called to say, Belinda, we need someone to run this project. And I went for the interview, and Austin said, maybe this is because music and life skills, those are your strong points. And I resigned from teaching. But I needed to still be with young people, with children, to inspire. And this project allowed me to continue being a teacher through, creating opportunities for the development of life skills. And 3 years in, the United Nations Association needed someone to to open up the office and to work with the university chapters on a national level. So I ran the two NGOs simultaneously, and I was giving myself 3 years to do Field Band. It's an after-school program. It's in Kayamandi, it's in Clutisville, Macassar, the so-called crime capitals of the Western Cape. When I went on, it became 8 years for Field Band, and I realized I'm going on in years. And although I would have loved to continue, I couldn't, do it in that way. So I had to rethink.
Again, yeah. So you reinvented yourself yet again.
Yeah. And I must thank Austin for that, because I said, look, I need to think. I'm now 53. How am I going to go forward so that I could still use my skills, my qualifications, my energy, and take it into the so-called retirement age, And it was him who came, who researched and said there is a course that will suit your interests. And it was this postgrad in translation at Stellenbosch University, and we lived in Stellenbosch at that time, close to 9 years already. And I was running into the classroom from the one project into the lecture room to another project with the phone on the lap, managing and facilitating these two NGOs, and also studying, and did fairly well at because it was in my field, which was language, and I graduated in 2014, and
So it's,
a new
yeah,
career started.
in this reinvention of your career for a second time, that's when the
Second
two of
time.
us
There we go.
connected. And you have translated both my books, Without You as well as Still Love Remains. And I would like us to just chat about that, how the important question was, you have had other experience with translation from Afrikaans into English, so you had that. But in particular, how did you experience, or how did it impact your work translating those two books?
Yeah, you know what? When you approached me, as I said, I was a bit curious as to why you picked me. I knew you were Dr. Beryl Botman at the time, and there are many translators, but I thought I knew Russell. It was Onse Russell on different levels. He became my rector when I did the postgrad, and I thought, oh wow, this is really something interesting. Let me listen and hear what you wanted to say. And then when I got your story, I didn't read it first. You just asked me, and I thought it's a no-brainer for me. Let me do this. But when I started reading your manuscript, at the time it wasn't a published book; it was the manuscript. And I was very much there when Russell passed. But I realized this is more than just about Russell. It's not actually about Russell. It's really about what you experienced. And being a wife of a priest myself, and going through a lot of things, challenges, I totally connected with the story. And I thought, yes, it has to be me. So reading this and doing the translation was actually a very personal thing, but it was on one level also a little bit daunting, because I felt like I was like a voyeur looking into your intimate moments with Russell.
How did the fact that it was such a personal story, how did that impact on you, and what did it do to you?
I was so moved, but I almost wanted to pick up the phone and say, it is too personal. I feel like I can't continue because I might not be objective as a translator, because one tends to, when you can relate so wonderfully to a story, that you can put something of yourself into this, and I was a bit afraid, and I was wondering when I started out. I did a first chapter, I think, for you, just so that you could see if this is what you wanted, and you were in agreement. And then I thought, no, I think I'm on the right track. So it was, in the end, for me, a personal journey to make sure I do the best I can to get your emotions and your feelings and your thoughts across. We engaged with one another around certain aspects. It wasn't just me working on my own little thing. I was always sharing with you what you.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that one of the things that I actually insisted on is that we meet and that we talk to one another in person. And so we met from time to time, because that was important to me. And I didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable, although the content matter was very uncomfortable. But that was the point of my writing project, is to write about my discomfort, about the many issues that I had to face.
And I so loved the conversation that she was having with Russell. You telling him what was going on with you, and I thought this is so unique. And I also talk in my own home about things that worries me when I'm alone. I talk to myself literally, and I could almost see him sitting there somewhere as you were talking. So this whole process of you writing and talking, and me then going into your thoughts and being you through the medium of English was really a very special experience. And I felt so connected to the story and to you.
I don't think I have told you at the time when I presented my manuscript that I will follow up with another one.
Yeah.
When I was writing, I thought it will be a much easier thing but it turned out not to be that easy for me writing. How did it turn out for you when you agreed to do even the second book?
You know, when you asked me the first time and I finished it, and you expressed your, I would say, almost gratitude that I got you. Those were your words. You are getting me. You got it. What I'm trying to say. And that was for me the stamp of approval that I am on the right track here, because I was always aware that I mustn't allow myself to speak there. It needs to be Bill Botman, because that is in the end who it is who wrote that book. Belinda didn't write it, but it must be you. And so you put that stamp of approval on. So it was almost like, I hope, when you said, I was hoping that it would be me. And I was quite curious as to how you were going to do a follow-up, because I thought maybe must there be a follow-up, because now the story has been told. And lo and behold, when you sent your second manuscript, you wanted me to first edit it. Remember that it was the Afrikaans. And I was so pleasantly surprised, because it was now love letters. And that was, for me, the perfect medium. You didn't tell me you were going to write letters, because when I was in Pollsmoor prison, when we were all arrested at St. Nicholas Church in 1986, commemorating June 16, at St. Nicholas Matroosfontein in Holt Road, I would write little letters to Austin, who was in Victor Verster, and the women were taken to Pollsmoor, and I would tear out pages from them, because we allowed after 2 weeks in detention, they allowed us to go to the library, and those blank pages I would scallopy tear out, and our families could bring money, and we didn't get the court money physically. They would say, you have 100 rand, somebody paid it into your account, and you could buy something. So a pen was one thing that I wanted. So I would write love letters to Austin in that way. And so I never sent it, obviously. It was just to write, and I still have one or two of those letters that I look at. And so this was so beautiful that you wrote these letters to him, and I was very happy to be the one again. And I was hoping that I could just, again, do it to your satisfaction.
And in terms of the content, I remember we met up, and while you were busy or close to the end, and you said, there was a time that I wanted to give up. And I thought, no, this is just too much for me. Do you remember?
I remember it so vividly. It was when I edited the book, there was this very personal aspect with regard to your step children. And I thought, oh, wow, this is to the bone. I think Bill needs to soften this. I've got to make these notes there that this is too personal and it will get you into trouble, and I don't think you should do it. But then, continuing to the later chapters, I left it, and I thought, no, my note is there. Please change this. This is too much, because I can't continue then if you insist, because how can you do this? But in the later chapters following, it became clear why it was then necessary. And then I realized, no. It has to be there. It has to stay. That was when I edited the Afrikaans. And then I forgot about it, because now that I start translating, and I'm now just going I have the overall idea because I edited, so I can just get into translating. And then I came to that very same piece, and I thought, oh no, I'm going to just summarize this here. I can't, and I made a note to get your permission to summarize again. And I knew that you were clarifying it, and I summarized it, and I went on, and then I realized, no, I need to go back to that very chapter and just translate it as is, because it made a lot of sense. But it was just each time I got to that point, then for the 2 times that I did it, it was hard. It was difficult. So as a translator, you sit there ethically thinking, it's not you, Belinda. You told me it's your story. And rightly so, it's your story. So I realized, no, I have no right actually to tell you, don't do it this way. But I really felt very connected to your story, and I also didn't want you to get hurt, whatever the repercussions would be, because then we became friends through the processes and the meetings that we've had, and I became sort of protective of who you are as a person, but it was necessary.
Those are the very issues that I also grappled with. What is it that I say? What is it that I include? And what is it that I don't, that I gloss over? And how do I make myself accountable for being honest, for being authentic, if I do a softened version of what my life was really like at the time. And so there are things that I didn't include that might have been even harder, but those are the decisions that I decided to make and see it through and know that I am accountable not only to myself but to the story as it relates to others. And so yeah, it was not easy for me to write, but it was also not easy for me to live.
I can well imagine. And, you know, I admire you really for doing just what you did, because translating it, I felt like, you know, you're showing us we can tell our stories. We must be bold enough. We all have a story to tell. And you showed us how it can be done. And I'm also grappling with things and wanting to tell stories, but you get busy with your life and you don't do it. And you helped me also, thankfully, to be able to say I have now 3 books that I have, that I translated from Afrikaans to English, which I enjoyed doing it. And I'm happy that you were happy with it. But I felt like I was on top of this, and it gave me a lot of satisfaction to be able to be to play a role in getting that message to the readers of English literature, English books. People need to also learn from that, and it's so wonderful. My first book was for Simon Brainder's The Sideboard. In English, it's called A Handful of Earth, and he was so concerned that it would. Because his first book that book got a lot of interest and people loved it. And he was looking for he said, a so-called colored translator. I was then busy with a postgrad at Stellenbosch. And he approached and I said, look, you're looking for a colored translator. I'm actually Khoisan. I don't know if that suits the profile. And he was not obviously then very happy, but he was also worried. And then he came afterwards and said, people just tell me this book reads so wonderfully, and he was worried about how it would come across in English, and that for me was also like a nice stamp of approval, because I knew that I wanted to tell that story too. It's the story of apartheid, of injustice and the quest for land and not getting the land that was promised, and the struggle of our people because we're poor because of a system and not because we are poor. We are actually very rich and our culture and our background. So you coming to me, giving this opportunity to do your story was another step up for me in terms of the fact that I have now a second book to say, yes, I am an established translator, and to have 3 books. I did a lot of translation at Die Burger, where I worked as one of the sub-editors in corporate content, and so we had to translate a lot when articles came in Afrikaans. So this was for me a lovely experience, but also a very personal experience, and in the end, very important stories to tell and to share your feelings and your intimate parts, and also your family situations, with your 2 daughters, and then also your extended family.
Yes, I'm so glad that you actually did more than translate my book. You became a co-storyteller. You became a co-teller of my story in that. And you spoke about how I also encourage you to tell your story. And so what do you have on the horizon?
Yeah, definitely my personal story. And I'm married to Austin, who is seen as a pestilent priest, who was always the priest for the people. But I was there alongside, not as Austin's wife, but I was Belinda, the educator, the musician, trained musician, who then became an empowerer of young people through the years, and then became a sub-editor at Die Burger, still continuing as a musician, and then a book translator. But in all those years, I was very much believing in the same principles that my husband Austin believed in and still believe in. So together we would see our role as we would use the platforms that we were given. The church was a wonderful place where we could play that role in teaching and reminding people that we are equal to one another, and that apartheid is wrong, and that we must resist, and that is not what God wants for his people. So I was in that struggle, not because of my husband, and then as a woman as well, because I did sacrifice a lot. I couldn't become at a school, apply for a post in a promotional post, because I was told by one principal that there are other teachers here who've been here longer, and you have all the qualifications and experience, but I owe it to this teacher. And then I have to stand down because we had to move so much around, and teachers felt intimidated, the educators there. You just come here and you do all these things. Why are you doing a musical for the children? Is it to get promotion? But you are there because you are, it's your calling. And so I had to also always stand back and say, Austin, I can't now. This principal actually came to me and say, I must now make way for Mrs. So-and-so because she's now been there longer. But I actually did more for that school than Mrs. So-and-so because she's just sitting in a little classroom and now she's going to get that promotion because I have to sacrifice that, not to give him a hard time. So there was always these challenges, and therefore I must tell my personal story and then also Austin's story because he did such a lot. And I have started with a bit of podcasting myself, did a course in podcasting, as you say, just get the training to be able to do that. And I will do a refresher so soon with Shirley Gunn's Human Rights. I think it's called the Human Rights. I can't remember now what her group. Sorry, Shirley, for forgetting. But just to hone my skill a little more, and then I would do a couple of stories about interesting people. Ek noem dit lekker local stories because I lived in Klaver, I lived in Makassar, I lived in Botraba, I lived in Stellenbosch, and I lived all over, and everywhere there's an interesting character that I still remember so vividly when Auntie Osnaki and Klaver say, my siel say, yeah. Those aunties that really made me rethink who I am because they are struggling, but they are just so resilient. And I come here with my Royal School of Church Music background, and these aunties sing so from the deepness of their heart and funny stomach of, they sing. And I'm thinking, I thought you have to sing like this, but actually you can also sing just from who you are and express. So those stories I definitely need to tell. And I am busy in my little back room there writing.
That is wonderful. Best wishes with all the thoughts and projects that you have and all the media work that you continue to do, and keep us updated with all kinds of interesting and important facts also in the media. Thank you for joining me on this podcast, On Her Way with Beryl Botman, in conversation with Belinda Jackson.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Walk tall, tell it all. You've been listening to On Her Way with Beryl Botman. You can purchase my books online on Amazon, Take a Lot, and at bookstores like Exclusive Books, Bargain Books, Independent Bookstores, and Barnes & Noble internationally. To connect with me, please follow me on Facebook to learn more about my book launches and talks. You can write to me at beryl.botman60@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.